Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks on Tuesday, the 21st day of August, year of our Lord 2012. Welcome to the John Moore Show. Well, it's 53 degrees here, deep in the mountains of Missouri Ozarks, on the way to a high of about 92 degrees, a 40-degree temperature in just a few hours. How about that? And we do have a whole list of Earth Change headlines at standdeo.com. I'm not going to go through them one by one. I'm finding time is short, but we're looking at earthquakes, volcanoes, bizarre, dangerous weather events, story about people giving up their horses. That's something I'm aware of personally. And, of course, the drought and the heat. This coming Friday, the 24th, I will be speaking at Ziggy's restaurant in Springfield, Missouri. There's several Ziggy's. This will be the one at the corner of Sunshine and Glenstone, two major streets in Springfield, Missouri. 5:30 p.m., no cover charge. And I'll be speaking on the effects of electromagnetic pulse attack on the United States. That's this Friday the 24th. The weekend of Labor Day, I'll be part of one of several speakers at the Patriots Symposium in Viburnum, Missouri, at the Viburnum Country Club. I'm working with my webmaster, Tim Spencer, to get these posted on ruralsurvival.info and my website, thelibertyman.com. So far, I don't believe the links are working. I'll be talking to Tim today to make sure the links get set up. But the start time for this event, Saturday and Sunday, the 1st and 2nd of September, will be 9 a.m. I'll be speaking. Command Sergeant Major Page will be speaking. We'll have speakers on long-range tactical marksmanship and so forth. Here's our break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. This is J.R. Moore. It is Tuesday, the 21st of August. Tomorrow, I hope we will have my friend Alexander Bachman, the Mexican journalist, with us. He'll be talking about his knowledge of People's Liberation Army, Communist Chinese troops in Mexico, and related matters. I've been getting a lot of inquiries wanting to have more documentation on this. Alexander is a journalist, and he's interviewed a number of first-hand witnesses to the People's Liberation Army Chinese presence in Mexico, which is extensive. We do have, patiently waiting in the green room, Brian. Brian is from Maine. Brian and I spoke privately yesterday about his concerns, and I know Brian's concerns are shared by many of you listening right now. Brian is up in the beautiful state of Maine, and he has a lovely family that he wants to make sure is safe, and that's what we're going to be talking about. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, John. How are you this morning?
I am looking forward to a great productive day. Now, Brian, other than I had one of the guys in my outfit in Vietnam was from Maine, and he talked about how brutal the winters could be up there. Other than a beautiful state with tough winters, tell us about your state and where you are in that state.
Well, our state is a state where a lot of the industry has struggled over time, but over the last 5 to 7 years, we're really kind of holding our own. It's a beautiful state. It has a lot of lakes, streams, and rivers, a lot of wilderness, and pockets of dense population. Total population of the state is around 1 million of permanent residents, and that almost doubles because of tourism during the summers. Great area for skiing, great area for outdoor activities.
All right. Well, that sounds like a Chamber of Commerce speech there, Brian. Anyway, what's your elevation above sea level where your home is, sir?
My home is at 189 feet above sea level.
Oh, baby. That's not high enough, as you know. Now,
yes.
You've had kind of an interesting life. You, as a young man, you were very interested in oceanography, weren't you?
I was, yes. I was able to achieve a PhD in oceanography, specializing in lobster ecology.
And there was a point in 1979, one of your instructors made a statement, And I was commenting to you how I wish I'd known you a few years ago. It took me 2 years to find out what you learned in 1979 about that bulge of water at the equator. What did that college professor tell you?
Well, the professor was describing the distribution, both horizontally in motion and also vertically, of ocean topology. There are several aspects to ocean topology. In other words, some parts of the ocean are higher than the other for various reasons. And he mentioned the enormous quantity of water which sits above the high tide mark in and around the equator due to centripetal, or what some people refer to as centrifugal force. And he all of a sudden just stopped his description mathematically and said, you know, if the Earth ever stopped spinning, this water would go somewhere and would flood all the coastal cities in the world. And we all just kind of sat there with blank looks on our face, and he just kind of pondered that thought for a second, and then he just went on to the math, and he never gave it another thought. But I distinctly remember being kind of dumbfounded, like, wow, that would be terrible.
You know, Brian, you and I didn't discuss this, but I know you're a fairly new listener, but that year is at 1979 is very, very important. That's the year that the U.S. Navy started giving classified briefings, beginning with flag rank officers, telling them exactly that at some date in the future there would be a pole shift. This bulge of water at the equator would relocate, flooding all coastal areas worldwide. Now, it's going back to 1979. This professor, it's the nature of that, any area of expertise, whether it's oceanography or anything else, that men and women at that level of expertise with PhDs attend conferences and seminars to go. That they read each other's publications. And I'm going to speculate here, Brian, and you can just piggyback and respond any way you like. But I'm going to speculate there's a very good likelihood that the oceanographer is connected to the U.S. Navy, and the oceanographer professor that you had in that class in 1979, it's very highly likely that they interacted professionally, read each other's papers, and possibly even attended conferences and seminars together. Would that be a fairly fair statement?
It is a fair statement that professors at that time and at all times kind of live in the world of their own profession and in and around the data that circles or is popular at that time.
Exactly.
And they just kind of move on to different topics as different topics become popular. So, it's possible, but I have no way to know if that.
Well, we don't have a way to verify that, but we're looking at people teaching at that level. At the university level, people teaching oceanography at that level, and men and women working for the United States Navy at that level. We're talking what, maybe 200 to 500 men and women in the entire country, maybe, if that?
Yeah, at that time, there were only 4 really big oceanographic schools that had good, solid physical oceanographic departments. Of multiple people, and Dalhousie Oceanography was one of them in Halifax, Nova Scotia. There were many schools who had physical oceanographers, but not many that had whole departments that had extensive funding. So Dalhousie happened to be one of them.
Well, I want to move on from this part of our conversation, but I just find it fascinating that your professor happened to make that statement at the same time, the same year, I should say, that the U.S. Navy figured this out. Now, moving on from there, you've come in contact with my information in the past month or so, and you have concerns about being too close to sea level now, don't you?
That's correct, yeah, and as any good scientist would do, I'm trying to assess the timing, trying to assess the level of risk, so that I can plan my strategy and help my family with their strategy. Okay.
Well, let's talk about that, because I know there's many people in the same boat, especially those on the East Coast and West Coast. There's an old saying, and I was thinking about this morning. I was having my first cup of coffee, Brian. It's better to be a year too early than a day too late. And something I've said a number of times, especially the last 6 months, is that these Navy veterans, the ones that were in these briefings going back to 1979, they don't worry about a date because they've made their preparations. They retire from the Navy. They've moved to the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks. They don't anguish or ponder a date because they don't have to. That's not your situation. So you're kind of caught between two things, having to be responsible with the family finances and whatever you've been able to accumulate in your lifetime, at the same time getting ready to relocate inland to high ground in an expeditious manner. That's kind of a quandary, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Okay. I'm going to suggest the following, and this is for everybody. You have a plan A and a plan B. Plan A will be to find a safe haven at a high altitude that you can establish on kind of a crisis basis fairly quickly, and I say fairly quickly, in 30 to 90 days, where you can have shelter, possibly, and there's different forms of temporary shelter people can have. Airstream motorhome RVs are good because they're very wind resistant. That shape is very wind resistant, and possibly some Connex shipping containers for storage. Those 40-foot long 8x8-foot shipping containers, which basically cost the same as the 20-footers, by the way. We're at a location where there's trusted friends that have potable water, a sewage system, a way for electricity to be there and backup electricity, where you can get set up fairly economically, fairly quickly, and have whatever provisions you set up there be safe and secure in the event that you need to relocate. In the meantime, you could be placing whatever real estate on the market you need to. And I had a broker's license back in a real estate broker's license back in the 80s myself, Brian. And people don't want to hear this, but any piece of real estate properly priced and properly marketed will sell in 30 days. I know people don't want to hear this because they always think that their property is worth more than what it's worth, but the market determines the value, not what you think it might be worth, but the market determines its value. And that's just a tough reality. Any piece of property that's properly marketed and properly priced will sell in 30 days. You still there, Brian?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Still listening and writing feverishly.
Okay. Well, you can always listen to the archive. How many people how many adults and how many children in your extended family, Brian?
6 adults and 7 children.
Okay. We're probably looking at about 3 to 4 RVs would handle that many people and not feel like they're too jammed up with the attendant amenities of sewer hookups, fresh water hookups, electrical hookups. Having a source of electricity independent of the power grid would be a tremendous thing for you. I don't know what the finances are. You and I don't need to talk about them on the air, but a good propane-fired generator, possibly a Zapworks nickel iron alkaline battery bank, would stand you and your family in good stead to have electricity. And here's our break, Brian. Everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tuesday, the 21st of August. This is J.R. Moore, and we are speaking with Brian up in Maine. And Brian has expressed his concerns, and I know these concerns are shared by many dozens, possibly hundreds of you right now. You're in a low-lying area, not too far from one of our oceans, and you would like to have a way to deal with this. Brian, the U.S. Navy says damage on the east and west coast and the Gulf Coast will go up to 400 feet above sea level. I generally recommend doubling that to 800 feet for a safe haven. You mentioned some areas when we talked privately that are at higher elevations. What are those elevations, if I may ask?
In Maine, there's elevations from 800 feet to about 2,000 feet that are commonly inhabited, and of course, then there are some peaks that are pretty rough. That would be pretty rough to establish a home front.
Right.
That go up to 4,600 feet.
All right. Well, that's good to know. Well, that 800-foot plus area, I think, is where you need to be focusing on, quite frankly. And you don't want to be. Of course, Maine only has 1 million people in total, so it's a fairly low-density state. Keeping in mind, of course, there's a potential of many hundreds of thousands of refugees that will be coming out of areas south of you there, New York, Boston areas, and so forth. That will be looking for safe havens themselves. So dealing with refugees will be an issue, and that needs to be put into the mix with everything else. Do you have people to help you with this project?
At this time, my wife is working extremely hard. She's a very diligent woman who I love very much. And I have some friends who are beginning to wake up and are beginning to do some things. All my daughters and their husbands working diligently to prepare.
All right. Well, combining resources like that can make things happen. I'm going to suggest that you establish a once-a-week meeting, possibly a Sunday afternoon dinner with people's schedules. That might work out the best, where you can have a meal together and everybody can be on the same page in terms of priorities, so that things don't get overlooked and some things don't get done twice. A once-a-week meeting like that, given the nature of what we're dealing with, might be a good thing for you to try to set up. Besides, what should be fun to have everybody together and have a meal.
That sounds like a great idea.
Well, you've worked, you've been a businessman, and I'm going to regard you as a CEO of this family project. Would that be a fair statement?
I accept the position immediately.
Okay. Well, as CEO, and you've been CEO before, I know, from our private conversations, with as many as 20-plus employees, you know that it's really the main problem most organizations have is communication. And verbal communication is probably the least effective and the most easily misunderstood way to communicate, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So written memorandums might be a good thing, a good way to communicate, so that there can be the least amount of misunderstandings. And by the same token, it's kind of ironic, emails are probably one of the least effective ways to communicate as well, because of the people's various levels of reading comprehension. And we all make assumptions, don't we, Brian, that everybody else has the same level of reading comprehension that we do.
Well, plus interpretation of terms and interpretation of statements is difficult to convey through email, and that's why really sitting down verbally and really working on it together and making sure that there are no assumptions and that all terms are understood is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're on the same page as far as that goes. So I think we have a plan here, Brian, and we don't know. You know, you may end up being 3 months or a year or too early, I should say. But that's fine. That'll give you some peace of mind knowing that all the pieces are in place and you've done everything humanly possible to protect those that you care about and that you love. So I think you're off on a mission here. What follow-up questions do you have right now, Brian?
Well, you know, the name of the Brazilian astronomer who is tracking Nibiru would be greatly appreciated.
Right. Well, I'll be talking to Dr. Deagle about that. Give my engineer your phone number off the air, if you would, please, and because I'm not sure I got it from when we spoke yesterday, Brian. Or send me an email. Let's do this. Send me an email to thelibertyman@AOL.com and put all your contact information in there, Brian. That would be great.
Okay, that sounds great. I will do that, John.
Okay, and I think given your background with oceanography and so forth, I think you and I might be talking a number of times in the next few months.
That sounds like a good tactic.
Outstanding. Well, I don't want to be cut off by the bottom of the hour break, and we'll just regard this, Brian, as an introductory conversation between you and I and the 2,000 people listening.
That sounds great.
Okay. Thanks for the call, Brian. I'll be in touch.
You're welcome, and thank you very much.
Okay. And that's Brian up in Maine. This is a very significant thing, ladies and gentlemen. Brian has a PhD in oceanography. and he understands oceans better than most people could ever comprehend. Here's our bottom of the hour break. We'll be back. Stay tuned. We got several callers on hold. First, we've got my dear friend Vincent Finelli. Good morning, Vincent.
Good morning, John Moore. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic. You and I are going to do a little radio on local Springfield radio later today, aren't we?
We are. This afternoon at 3 o'clock Central Time, you're going to be on, and we're going to be talking about one of your favorite subjects, the climate.
Absolutely. Violent climate change. Yes,
violent
yes, sir.
Climate change. Mm-hmm.
And then I'll get to see you and your lovely wife this coming Friday, the 24th, at Ziggy's, won't I?
You surely will. And I'll tell you what, John, we've been promoting this for over a week now, and you have a lot of fans in Springfield, Missouri. That comes to the meetups.
Well,
you packed the house.
Well, it's fun to pack the house. It's great. I haven't been there for 8 months. Can you believe that?
Well, that's a long time. How did that happen?
I don't know. Just time flies when you're having fun. But
having fun, I think you've got a lot of people concerned.
Yeah, well, I'm concerned as well, and I'm taking action on my concerns.
Sure.
And I know you are as well, aren't you, Vincent?
I am. John, I was looking out the studio window last evening, and I was looking up at the sky, and I was looking at the clouds, and they're just not moving. They really are not moving. It used to be when we were children, you could see the clouds traveling by. Now they just park, and also the rays of the sun are so hot that in our house, right here in Missouri, in the farmhouse, we have installed lined curtains, because regular curtains aren't enough to keep the rays of the sun out. They just aren't.
Well, and in addition to that, now, would you agree with me? Would it be a fair statement that yesterday, August 20th, was a very pleasant, warm summer day?
Except for the rays of the sun.
Okay, now, I rode my motorcycle 200 miles on the highway yesterday. I killed 3 bugs.
That's
scary.
Normal. That is not normal.
It's become normal.
Well, yeah, but it's not normal from 10 years ago, that's for sure.
I drove across Labor Day weekend last year, 2011. I drove across the entire state of New York at night at 70 miles an hour, and maybe 2 or 3 bugs on the windshield.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to change that old saying about, how can you tell a happy motorcyclist from the bugs in his teeth.
Vince, let's do some radio later in the day, and I'll see you Friday. I got a bunch of calls on hold, sir.
Sounds great, John. See you in the afternoon. Bye-bye.
Okay. And let's see. I'll go here to see who we have. It looks like we got Joe Casper, who's going to give us an update on how to take care of venomous bites. Good morning, Joe.
John, how are you? It's great to talk to you. Love your show.
Thank you, sir.
John, I know you're pressed for time, so I'll get right to it if that's okay.
Let's do it.
Okay, John, about 19 years ago, my wife had a client. He was a doctor. He was bit by a rattlesnake out in the hayfield haying one day. And getting into his pickup truck, he had a stun gun on the seat, and he sat on it. He got zapped in the leg, quite a distance from where the snake bite happened. Well, he got to the hospital, and it was a lot better. Well, it got him into doing some research on this, and he reported to my wife that, there's something to this, that he is working on a DC shock that cures venomous bites. Well, about a year later, my wife was bitten by a brown recluse. We tried to chase him down. He passed away. But we got a hold of his nephew, and he had got the papers from the doctor on how this works. And it's very, very simple. If y'all remember the first stun guns that ever came out, the little ones, the 20 to 40K, that's what we use. And you take a little insulated wire, and you can, put it on one end of the prog of the bite. You can take the end that's exposed, put it right on the bite, and if you could go around it like northeast, southwest on a map, just little tiny, as quick as you can do it, and that stops it. I also wanted to put out a thing that I am not a doctor or anything like that, but through the years, I've probably done 25 to 30 people and animals with this 20 to 40K stun gun. Sometimes you can't get, 4 zaps in and that kind of stuff, but I have never seen it not work. I've seen dogs' legs and cats' legs that look like the skin was going to just rip right open, and you can just watch the swelling go down. The sooner you get to it, the better. But I've seen people that look like they needed their hands cut off, just terrible bites, and they were on antibiotics from the doctor and whatnot. And I've always shocked people myself to show them that it's about like touching an electric fence if you ever touched one,
Right.
And it has never not worked. And I've where in an animal's case where you're lucky to get one zap in, I've just put the stun gun right on the bite and just got them like for a full second one time, and that's all it takes. And I wanted to pass this information on for all these years, and I thank you for letting me tell the people, John, because people lose limbs and have horrible things happen to them with brown recluse copperhead bites.
Oh, yes. Well, Brian, we do appreciate this. I have heard this. In fact, it was earlier this year. I heard it for the first time at a meeting I was at locally here in Crawford County, Missouri. So I have independent confirmation that this does, in fact, work, and we do appreciate your sharing it with everybody, Brian.
Well, I'm Joe, but John, I sure do appreciate it, and it really...
I mean Joe. I'm sorry.
It really does work, John. It really does work.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate the call, Joe.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Bye-bye. And
we've got Dave in Ohio. Good morning, Dave. You're on the air, Dave.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can now. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. You can hear me now?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Oh, hey, how you doing today, John?
Good.
Good. Hey, I just wanted to give a call real quick and just touch base with you. I've talked to you several times in the past. And it's kind of goofy, but with this December 2012 coming up, we were talking at work about this, and I kind of had we were talking about the whole topic, and do I actually believe that something was going to happen on that particular day? I said, no, not really. And it kind of dawned on me then, basically what you have is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have a lot of people. There was a lot of movies, a lot of publicity. People are getting into Nibiru. There's disinformation and information out there. And kind of the theory I came across was, again, a self-fulfilling prophecy. As you get into later on in the year here, people, when they go to the grocery store, instead of buying 1 gallon of milk, they're going to be buying five. I mean, just I try to reiterate that to the people at work, is that our society and everything that we have is so fragile that it doesn't take much to unravel it. And I think that, you'll have the have-nots out there thinking, well, if something does happen, then I have nothing to lose, so I'll take whatever I want. You follow me? It's kind of like whether something happens that day or not, I don't believe anything will. But I just think
it will be the first day of winter. We know that for a fact.
Well, I agree, but I mean, I might not be making. But when we were talking about that, I said, you have the people. We have such a fringe society, and I just thought that was interesting. I told the guy at work, I said, you're not going to want to. It'll be interesting to see what actually happens, and you may, the stores might get a little crazy, and So like you said, the whole thing about being prepared, I think, is very important.
Well, Dave, I guess, December 21st, 2012 is just, not quite 4 months away. I guess it is exactly 4 months away, isn't it? So whatever happens, but we're not, I've never focused on that date myself. The researchers and scientists I work with, Professor McCanney's been up front on this, out front, I should say, telling us about the multiple Mayan calendars. There's the most recently discovered Mayan calendar goes 7,000 years into the future from now. So it's that particular calendar talked about the end of an age, not the end of the world, and life will go on, I'm sure.
Right. No, I mean, I totally agree with you. But like I said, it kind of goes back to our mindset with being prepared that, that I think there's that fringe group of people out there that, when it comes right down to it, some people, in our society, I mean, where I live at, it's a relatively calm place, but pretty populated. And like I said, people go in the grocery store, instead of buying one thing, a guy goes in to buy milk, and the guy next to him has got 5 gallons, and the other guy's got 6 gallons, and it's like I said, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I share your belief. I don't think anything, first day of winter. But
okay.
Well,
all right. Thank you for the heads up, Dave, and we're going to move on here. We got Mike in Arizona. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, John. I'm a paramedic with over 30 years experience, and I just want to make a comment about the speaker before last that brought up about treating snake bites with electroshock.
Yes, sir.
The evidence so far is when there's reports of this being successful, in fact, most of those cases were dry bites, and they were not envenomated at all. When someone is doing a treatment and they don't have a precise amount of electricity that they're using or anything, there's no kind of study to indicate that it's beneficial, and in fact, probably more harmful, and also you're delaying getting some sort of treatment. So I would just caution the listeners, they might just be better off calling 911 and letting us do what we do best. Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you for the call. Of course, where I am, response time for the police is 30 to 45 minutes. And the paramedics actually are a little bit closer than the police most of the time. I do know that the stun gun can do no harm, unless you've got a severe heart condition or some other thing that puts you at risk. And it's kind of ironic that Joe would call me with this information when I've received independent confirmation of it. What Mike is referring to, of course, is the way the medical establishment will look at something like this. It hasn't been studied by some universities with peer-reviewed papers. Out here in the Ozarks, we just do what works. If it works, we do it. If it doesn't, we don't. I mean, that's pretty much it. We do have open lines here at 877-488-5350. Getting not too close to the end of the show, but we're kind of headed that way. Talk a little bit about firearms and ammunition. These hundreds of millions of rounds being bought by the federal government, various agencies, is very concerning. They're saying publicly, if they say anything at all, that they're getting it for training purposes. Well, I'm sorry, but these numbers exceed any legitimate training purpose. They do. They far exceed any legitimate training purpose, way in excess. Most men and women who are in uniform in any capacity or plain clothes using firearms, they have a firearm because it's part of the job. They could care less about having a firearm. They could care less about training with it unless they're compelled to train with it. Then and only then will they train with it. That's the nature of most men and women who have a firearm as part of their professional responsibility. There are exceptions, of course, and we always hear about the exceptions, the guy or the gal who wins the local pistol competition or whatever it might be. They are the exception. The majority, I'll tell you a quick story here. I got a couple of minutes. I was at a public firing range. This is about 20-something years ago. And they had... it was a nice, sunny, warm afternoon, outdoor range in St. Louis County, and there was a young lady sitting, shooting at the same shooting position. We had two-person shooting positions, and she's hitting high, she's hitting low, she's all over the target, not hitting anywhere near the center. I walked up to the range officer and I asked him, I said, "Do you think that young lady would mind me helping her? I'm an NRA certified firearms instructor." And he kind of whispered to me, this was a St. Louis County police officer, by the way, he kind of whispered to me, I don't think so. She's an FBI agent. So I didn't say anything to the young lady who could barely get lead on the paper at this public range. And I told this story to a couple of FBI agents a number of years later, and they were both frantically trying to guess which of their female co-agents this was. That was at the range and couldn't hit anything. Let's see, we do have callers here. Oh my, look at all these callers. Dan in Missouri. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, John. How are you, buddy?
Real good.
I hadn't been sitting on this information, but it sure reminded me of my experience with a stun gun and a brown recluse bite.
Okay, hold that thought, Dan. We got a break here. All right, we're back. Dan and I have our backpacks off, ready to do some radio here. You got that 1 mile run in with that 50-pound backpack there, Dan?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Hoorah. So you had a brown recluse spider bite. Was that you or somebody close?
That was me.
All right.
It was on my hip.
It was a brown recluse, there's no doubt.
Absolute, confirmed by a nurse that's seen many of them.
Okay.
It was about 5 days into the bite. It was about 3.5 inches in diameter, swole up 1/2 inch. Pretty doggone red, and it had a white dot in the middle about the size of a BB.
Okay.
Pain was shooting to my ankle. And I had read an article, and I've still got the cover of the magazine, Outdoor Life, July of '88. Snake Bite Shock Cure, Part 2. I saved that cover. I'll show it to you if you want to see it sometime. But anyway,
okay.
This friend of mine had one of them great big nasty-looking stun guns, about 6 inches long with the angled top.
Right.
It'd almost make sweat pop out on you just to hear it discharge.
Yeah, I've got one of those. Yeah.
And I was sitting on the bed just seeing how quick I could get on and off the trigger, knowing that whatever we do would be better than enduring the progression of that brown recluse bite. It's just horrible. And I laid it down on the bed, and a dog jumped up on the bed, and it slid over and bumped my leg. And it was a real quick, just pop. So I realized that particular circuit in that device held a residual charge. So I shot it in the air again, touched it to my leg without touching the trigger, pop. It wasn't any worse than a shock off a doorknob, John.
Right.
So I thought, man, that's quicker than anybody can get on and off the trigger. So my buddy did it because I couldn't really reach it good. He snapped it 4 or 5 times around that bite. Within 3 days, there was absolutely no indication I'd ever been bit, and there was a little bitty scab where that white dot was, and the scab was about half the size of a pencil eraser.
Amazing.
Now,
Amazing.
one follow-up. I was in Oklahoma building a custom house for some people. You know the kind of house it was.
Right.
And his neighbor came over, and I was introduced to him that he was an EMT. So I baited him. I said, I knew what was going on with the shock treatment, and I thought, well, I'll clue this guy in. So I asked him, I said, we're going to be working around here for the next 3 weeks. Do you guys have brown recluse spiders? And I knew good and well they did. He goes, yeah, and I'll tell you what, if you get bit, let me know and I'll fix you. And I said, tell me more. And he said, well, our boss doesn't condone it, but he says every EMT driver carries a stun gun. And he said, I can't tell you how many brown recluse bites and snake bites that we've stopped the progression. But we can't do it officially, but once we explain it to you, if you want it, we'll cure you. He says it'll be gone in 2 or 3 days. You won't even know you had a bite.
Outstanding. Dan, thank you for the call.
You're welcome, buddy. Take care.
Okay. And this will be our last call. Sherry in Kansas. Make it quick, Sherry.
Hey, John, I had a thought on the Spetsnaz. China, when they bought the mortgage-backed securities, they had I've heard they had a clause in there where they actually get to take possession of the property. What if they've hired the Spetsnaz to be their repo people?
Well, that would be a hoot, wouldn't it?
Well, that'd be the people to get, huh?
That'd be it. Thank you, Sherry. That's it. We're out of time today.
Bye.
Okay, you all be safe out there. Buy lots and lots of ammunition. For those of you behind enemy lines, your message for the day is get in shape, and get in shape now. Be safe, and God bless America.